Hey guys, what's going on? It's Gidrah here, and today I'm going to be showing you the most optimal settings for League of Legends, or at least the most optimal in my personal opinion. So, first thing you're going to want to do is press escape, and then we're going to start with our hotkey settings. So, in competitive play in League of Legends, the best thing you're going to want to do is have it set to quick cast all. This will make it so that instead of the default, which is pressing the skill, pressing Q, or let's say I press E. Here, I can just show you. By default, it's set that when you press E, it just makes a reticule like this, and then you have to click to actually activate the spell. With quick cast, it makes it so that you press it and it instantly will cast for you. Wait for that to come off cooldown. So notice how I just have my mouse right here. I press the key and it automatically goes. This makes it so that your reaction time is much quicker than people who are using normal cast. So quick cast is going to be the most optimal setup for this. So first thing I do is by default, level up a spell is Control Q. When you're going up against somebody in lane and you want to get, the early level 2 advantage, what you'll do is you'll wait for your level 2, indicated by your experience bar here, and then when you level up, instead of going down with your mouse and leveling it by clicking it, you would actually just press, Control Q. So if I had started Q in lane as Tryndamere, for example, and then I just got E, instead of having to wait, go down, and level up the spell, I would be able to auto them, level it up with Control E, and then instantly go in on them. And, that's going to save me about 2-3 seconds, which in top lane matchups can be, winning or losing a lane. See how fast I just leveled that up? But anyways, by default it's set to Control Q. I actually have mine set up to Alt Q and Control Q, because my thumb is what's used to reset the camera, and so that's the closest to my thumb, because it's kind of awkward for me to, make my pinky go down to hit control, because it's kind of out of the way when my fingers are naturally on tab Q, W, E, R. So I like to have it set on Control or Alt Q, Alt W, Alt E, Alt R, and that's going to make it so I can level up my spells faster, and then I'm using my thumb to actually level them up versus my pinky. For me, it's just more comfortable. I have huge hands and I'm left-handed, so that's what works for me. It might be different for you. But again, this is all personal preference when it comes to hotkeys. For player move or player attack move click, I like to set that on A. And basically what that does is it makes it so your reticule, when you click, is orange. Well, you're going to be pressing A. It's going to be orange, and that makes it so that anything in that area, you're automatically going to attack. This is really good for AD carries, for example, because watch, I'll right-click, and then press it, right-click, press A, right-click, press A. It's going to make it so that I can auto-attack much faster and cancel frames. And also, you can use this for checking brush. Say you think there's a guy right here. What you can do is you can press A, and if there's somebody in there, instead of, having to wait till you have vision on them and right-clicking them, you will instantly start auto-attacking anyone in, your character's auto-attack range. So that's really useful. I use this a lot when I'm playing AD carry. It's called attack move, player attack move click. Player attack only click, for example, just makes it so that you auto attack anything in the nearest vicinity. I think it's set to that by default. So you can copy these settings. This is what works well for me. Camera control, I don't change any of that. Communication, I have mine changed as well. By default, it's set so that you would press Control mouse button 1, I think, and it would do like a caution ping or something. I have mine set to Alt left click, so that instead of a caution ping it's going to be an alert ping. I find this is useful for a number of reasons, mostly because this sound right here is much more annoying to your teammates than this sound where you're actually pointing stuff out, and it's kind of easier to see on the map. So Alt left click is going to be the quick alert ping. For your retreat ping, you can just leave it on V. In most MOBAs like Heroes of the Storm, for example, they already have like this setting where V is your quick retreat, and even have it so that Alt and left click is going to be your point out stuff. And also in Heroes of the Storm, by default, it's set so that your attack move click is A, which is, again, the orange reticule. So that's what I like to use personally, and I think it works out really well. Item shop, everything else you don't really have to worry about. Now, after you're done with all these settings, there's one more important one, the quick cast with indicator. So if you have this clicked, it makes it so when you press your skill, as long as you're holding it, the range indicator will be displayed, and as soon as you release it, it will just go back to a normal quick cast. So you don't have to left click with that. That's something that I really find useful, but supposedly, because of the way the game is set up, there's kind of a glitch from what I've heard that makes it so that spells can sometimes not cast, which is why you want to have the cast spell upon another spell being pressed, especially when you're, in a team fight and you're slamming your face on a keyboard just trying to get a kill. Because, for example, with cast the spell, the press spell upon pressing another spell enabled, when I press E and then Q, it's automatically going to cast both of them. So that's just going to increase your reaction time if you choose to play with range indicators. If somebody can confirm if this is like good or bad, because I've tried playing without them, and it's, as long as you know your champion's range, you'll be okay. But if you're just trying to learn a champion, I would leave those enabled. That's going to help you out a lot, and also with warding. Okay, so that pretty much does it for hotkeys. Now, moving on to video settings. This is going to be heavily dependent on your graphics card and the monitor you're using. So, resolution you're going to want to be the default of your monitor. That's going to be optimal. I like to have colorblind mode on because the green color by default of your health bar looks too much like your mana bar. Well, I don't have a mana bar because I'm Tryndamere. I guess this was actually work better for Tryndamere because it has a contrast. But normally your health would be green and then your mana would be blue, and the color they use is just too close to each other. So I like to have colorblind mode on just because it makes it easier to see myself in a team fight. Hide icon candy. If you have a lower setting, or like a lower end graphics card, or don't even have a dedicated graphics card at all, if you do this, it's going to make like all the little woodland life and everything. Basically, yeah, it's just eye candy. Disable this, your system will run a little better. I like to use relative team colors, because no matter what team you're on, you're always going to be blue and the enemy team's always going to be red. You can get better performance, especially if you have a lower end graphics card, by switching to full screen. I have a higher end graphics card, so I like to do borderless. So when I want to tap out to like look at builds or change the song on my music playlist, I can just do that without having to wait a couple seconds. It's just a seamless transition like that. Next up, we're going to have character quality, environment quality, effects quality, and shadows. This, again, is going to be dependent on your graphics card, but a safe setting will be medium, 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 and low or off on the shadows. If you can live without shadows, this is going to increase your performance by a ton. If you struggle with frames per second issues, then that will help you increase your frames per second. Me personally, I have a very high-end graphics card, so I can leave all this stuff at high. But when I had a, a semi-expensive $200 graphics card, I think it was a NVIDIA GeForce GTX 660, high, 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 and low worked best for me. But if you have a lower end system, yeah, you're going to want to mess with this until you can consistently get the frames per second that is desired for you. Which brings us to frames per second. Normally people leave it uncapped. I found this isn't optimal, especially if you have a monitor that's 60 frames per second or has a 60 frame refresh rate, because most monitors, unless they're in the $500 range or for whatever, are going to have a 60 60 frame per second refresh rate. So I know what you're thinking, wow, I just lock it at 60 frames per second. Well, that's not really optimal either, because the whole reason for uncapped, it says it right here, uncapping increases perceived frame rate and smoothness on higher end machines. Your monitor can't keep up with the frames per second from your graphics card, and so that causes frames to literally be cut in half. So basically your monitor can't process all the frames, so it does the only thing it can do, which is cutting those frames in half, and then your game starts to look choppy, especially during team fights. That's only an issue I've noticed. If you have like NVIDIA G-Sync or something like that, then that's probably not going to be an issue for you. But what I found is, instead of having it at uncapped, having it at 144 frames per second has been the most optimal setting for me. Now, if you have a lower end machine, then yeah, I would recommend capping at 60 frames per second. You never want to turn on virtual sync. Virtual sync is the devil. If you have, a mid to high range machine, I would stick to 144 frames per second, unless you have a monitor that's 120 frames or higher. If you do, then your monitor will most likely properly display all the frames per second you're getting. I'll just show you what it looks like with uncapped with mine. See, mine goes into the, during normal gameplay, it's around 140 frames anyways. So capping it at this really isn't losing that many frames, and it's much more stable. I know I'm probably boring some of you guys, so I'll move on. Character inking, this is another personal preference. I think it's disabled by default. And what that does is it makes it so that your character, let me zoom in here, all the characters have a slight black border around them. This makes it easier to distinguish, characters and minions from terrain. So if you have a higher end machine, I'd recommend keeping that on. If you don't, you can disable that. Anti-aliasing, I'll show you what it looks like on. You can't really tell much of a difference with anti-aliasing on or off, so there's no real reason to have it on, in my opinion. But you can if you have a really high-end machine. For example, my machine tells me that I should have everything set to very high, but I still tone down some of the things like frames per second, anti-aliasing, and shadows I have on low, because those things all take huge amount of resources from your graphics card, and the trade-off isn't really that great. So these settings right here, if you have a high-end machine, are going to be optimal. If you have a lower-end machine, again, I would, stick to medium, shadows off, cap your frames per second at 60, or even uncapped. Maybe you don't have the issue I have with the frame juddering, or you just don't care. But 144 is the most stable that I've seen. And then, you can make it full screen. So these are going to be the settings if you have a lower end machine. And then, of course, you can bump it up a little more. Basically, you're looking for that 120, 140 frame sweet spot. Anyways, moving on. Volume, you don't need to worry about. That's going to be personal preference. HUD size. This one, oh wow, did I not change this? Huh. Okay, well, HUD size is the size of your skills and stuff. I usually had mine at 88. I don't know how it got big again. But that's going to be a personal preference. You know, if you want your HUD super small so that you can see people coming up to gank you easier, versus, you know, by default, it makes it so you have this giant blind spot right here. I mean, yeah, about maybe 50%. That kind of looks good. And then that just gives you more screen real estate by having that at a lower setting. I think I probably just want to go with 70 because I like even numbers and I'm weird. Now, I would highly recommend just having all the settings that I have, just copying them. Showing health bars, we want that. We don't want to enable HUD animations right here. It just makes it, you know, more difficult to see. If you like it because it looks pretty, you know, I do it, but I keep it off. Screen flash on damage, that's a personal preference. Screen flash on loss of control, personal preference. Show new player tooltips. You probably, if you played the game for so long, you don't need to see them, but this tells you, like, oh, you can press tab and click on Sona for the DJ Sona skin, stuff like that. Wait, what happened? Interesting. Oh no, I don't want an AFK warning. That's really strange. Oh, okay, it's because I'm playing Tryndamere. So here's a setting that's not enabled by default. The show spell costs. If you turn this on, it's going to show you how much mana in the top right corner that each spell uses. I highly recommend keeping this on. This is going to make it much easier to, you know, trade with your mana in lane, or it's just going to make it so that you know how much you're able to do. What's the word I'm looking for? You get what I mean. Yeah, show mana cost on spells is good. What else we got? Show summoner names. Oh, this is on the scoreboard. Interesting. So they just added this. I guess they make it so that you can see summoner names, and by default you can't. I would probably want to have that on personally. Mirror scoreboard layout, that's new. I'm not sure about that. Show team frames on the left. Oh, okay. So in the new League of Legends, your teammates will be right here, but I guess you can have it set to the old way, which is having your teammates on the left. They're probably going to be bigger portraits. If you're playing someone like Shen and you just want to ult to somebody by pressing R and clicking on their portrait, then that might be better for you, but probably can just leave that off for any other character. Chat timestamps you want on. Show all chat in games. This is personal preference. If you plan to go pro at this game, I recommend leaving all chat off. As for combat text, I like to leave everything on except mana. I think by default, the only thing that's unchecked is experience. So experience, you want to see like how much experience you're getting in the lane, especially if you're in a bush, for example, or you're playing support or top, and you're leashing experience off of a ranged opponent, or like minions, because you don't want to get poked and killed instantly. So this will show you like how far away the range is for your actually getting experience, and just how much experience you're getting in general. I like to leave this on. Anyways, mouse speed and camera move speed. You want to leave this on default. Reason for it being, in game, this is automatically set to 0, y-axis. There's no acceleration, there's no deceleration. This is going to be the most optimal settings. What you'll want to do is change your mouse DPI, and you're going to want to change your speed by your mouse DPI, not in-game settings. For Windows settings, let me see if I can actually bring that up and make it show on the desktop. Okay, there we go. So in your mouse settings, let me just go to mouse settings. The heck are mouse? You know what? Okay, here it is. Get into mouse settings. Windows 10, it's kind of hard to figure it out, but you're going to want to go to pointer options, and you want to make sure that this is on the 6th tick right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, and then you're going to want to make sure you disable enhanced pointer precision. That is the devil. This is going to be, you know, the most optimal. Zero, negative, no like negative or acceleration on your mouse. It's just going to be perfect, and then you can scale your DPI on your mouse. For my DPI, I like to leave it at 1600. That's just from what I've read seems to me the most optimal, because anything over like 1800, some mice come default with 1800, like the Death Eater, which I used to use for a long time before I switched to the Logitech G700S, but they would come with 1800. But for most mice, you're gonna want to have it set to 1600, because that is the best DPI if you enjoy a faster DPI that does not have pixel skipping. And if you want to read up on that stuff, you can do so, but I'm not going to explain that here because it's just going to be boring. But anyways, that's going to be the most optimal settings, and you know, my personal preference settings in general. But I think they work really well, especially the alt level up spells. The quick cast show range indicators I feel is really useful, and then your graphic settings, if you're having frame per second issues, I would just stick to the guide I showed you. So that's going to be it for this tech tutorial, guys. I hope this helps you out in getting your desired frames per second in League of Legends, and I will see you guys next time.